The Jeff Younger Show is on. Dedicated to my sons, James and Jude.
Howdy. What are we talking about today? Talking about style. Not fashion tips or surface polish, but style as a set of decisions about reality that you're making, whether you know it or not. Every time you write an email, speak in a meeting, choose what to wear, or conduct yourself at a social event, you're broadcasting a philosophy. Most men broadcast confused philosophies because they've never examined what their style actually commits them to, and that's why people think they're fucking dumbasses. So let's talk about how to avoid that. First of all, you're going to go, how is style a philosophy? Style in writing, speaking, dress, or conduct forces you to answer some fundamental questions. Every style makes implicit claims about 5 things: what truth is and whether you can know it, how you should present what you know, what the situation is between you and your audience, what role thought and language play, and what you owe to the people that you're addressing. Now, these are not arbitrary preferences. They're philosophical stands, some of them pretty deep philosophical stands. And the man who hasn't examined them is taking stands by accident, and that usually results in incoherence. And it comes across as fake, deceptive, or just really strange. All right, I'm going to give you some concrete examples, and I'm going to start with writing. Let's first of all think about the way you'll see writing mostly in most nonfiction magazines or newspaper features, most nonfiction that's published by mainstream publishers. This is what they call classic style. Its basic philosophy says this: truth exists. You can know it. In fact, it says everyone can know the truth, and language can present that truth without any distortion. Writing is presented, and language in general is presented as a kind of window by which you look through and you can see the truth on the other side. The writer and the reader are presented as equals, and the model scene is a conversation, like 2 competent people looking out the window at the same thing, where one points something out to the other. Okay? The writer needs nothing from the reader except his attention because, look, I can see it, you can see it, it's obvious, right? Once I show you, it's obvious. The reader can verify everything himself, right? Just look out the window. Remember, the window is the text, right? Just look out the window and see if you see what I see. Classic style produces sentences like this: the Nile is the longest river in Africa. It's clear, direct, verifiable. There's no hedging about whether rivers really exist or whether Africa means the same thing to everyone. The writer saw something and he's showing it to you. What kind of books exemplify this classic style? I would say Thucydides' History of the Peloponnesian War, Jane Austen's novels, Mark Twain's Life on the Mississippi, all of George Orwell's essays, but especially Shooting an Elephant and Politics and the English Language. If you look at A.J. Leibling's journalism, I would say that's it. That's a great example, actually, and maybe even a definitive example. The best field guides, read the Audubon Society guides. They're just pure classic style. These writers share the assumption that they've observed something real, that you could observe it too, and that language serves as a transparent window onto that reality. They don't hedge, they don't apologize, they just present. What about writing that just doesn't sound like that? Does that mean it's bad writing? No. And this is the crucial point that most people miss. Other styles are not failed attempts at classic style. What they represent are totally different philosophies that are producing different writing because they have a different standpoint on those philosophical points we mentioned earlier. A good example of this would be plain style. Its philosophy is that truth is the common property of common people, directly perceived and expressed through common means. Sophistication perverts truth. Simple language may not capture everything, but at least it's pure. Plain style produces what to the modern ears sound like proverbs and folk wisdom. A stitch in time saves 9, that kind of thing. It assumes that everyone already has access to the truth. The writer isn't showing you something, as in classic style. He's reminding you of what you already know. Do you see the difference there? What are some books that are written in plain style? Book of Proverbs, written in plain style. Benjamin Franklin's Poor Richard's Almanac, written in plain style. Much of the King James Bible, written in plain style. Aesop's Fables. They're not trying to show you something that you haven't seen. They're crystallizing wisdom that everyone already knows and possesses from common experience. Plain style is appropriate when you're speaking to ordinary people about ordinary things that they've already experienced. It's appropriate when you need to introduce a refinement, qualification, or something genuinely new. It's just not going to work if you do that. So you can't do philosophy in plain style. You can't present scientific discoveries. The style's very philosophy excludes sophistication. Do you see how the style itself reflects the philosophical commitments of the person writing in it? Most writing that you've probably come across in a practical world is business writing. Certainly, half of what I read is business writing. That's written in practical style. Its philosophy is completely different. The motive isn't truth for its own sake at all. In fact, it often doesn't concern itself much with truth, period. It's really just about getting a job done. The reader's busy. He doesn't want to know everything. He doesn't want to be bothered even with what you're trying to tell him unless it's absolutely necessary. He wants what's useful for his own decisions. The relationship is not symmetric equals as it was in classic style and plain style. It's hierarchical. You're writing this as though it's going to go to a superior who's very busy and is going to make a decision. It's one job description communicating to another. It's not even people communicating to another. Practical style permits skimming. Like most business documents are never read. They're just skimmed because its whole structure is designed purely for efficiency. Headers, bullet points, topic sentences at the beginning of the paragraphs, the inverted pyramid style. These aren't just formatting preferences. They're philosophical commitments. The reader's time matters more than the elegance of your thought. Parsing speed trumps everything. What are some books in practical style? Look at any technical manual. Look at military field manuals like FM 7-8, one I'm very familiar with. Read business books like David Allen's Getting Things Done. That's a very popular book. It's written in this style. You could skim that book. You don't even have to read that book to get the main things out of it that you want to use. Look at legal briefs. Medical protocols. The Wall Street Journal news page is written this way. Textbooks are often designed to convey information efficiently. They're not designed to do deep enough. I think one of the reasons I think that a lot of people have trouble reading advanced mathematics books is that mathematics books are not written in a practical style. They're written in a style that accommodates deep reading and deep understanding, right? And we'll get to what that style is later. But these business books assume that a reader has a job to do, and the writing is serving a job. It's not presenting the truth. The writing isn't meant to be even enjoyed. It could be writing that you don't even like reading. It's thinking of writing as a tool itself, as an instrument. It delivers what's needed and then gets the hell out of the way, okay? That's totally different than classic style or even plain style. When would you not want to use a style like that? Suppose you're trying to present truth that matters for its own sake. Maybe you want your reader to be fully engaged and not skimming. Maybe when elegance serves the thought and is a mechanism you use for emphasis. When you want the experience of reading to be worth something beyond the information extraction. Or perhaps you want to carry a reader along with your experience so that they get the same revelations that you got as you walked along learning this. Okay? That's simply not appropriate for practical style. A field guide to birds uses classic style. The reader's in the field, looking at a bird, wanting to know what it is. The writing assumes two people looking at the same thing, one more experienced pointing out what the other will recognize. Unusual, quote, unusual among songbirds, shrikes prey on small birds and rodents, catching them with the bill and sometimes impaling them on thorns or barbed wire for storage. That kind of sentence will earn attention by showing you something worth seeing. You're never going to see something like that in practical style. What about other kinds of communications you've probably heard? What about speeches or sermons you hear at church on Sunday? That's oratorical style. And it imbibes a kind of completely different philosophy. The purpose isn't to present truth, or it's not transmitting even information, really. It's moving a heterogeneous crowd to some unified action or belief. The speaker uses what the audience already thinks. He's not introducing new observations or refining old ones. He's molding many individuals into one body directed at a single purpose. Oratorical style really specializes in the use of rhythm, repetition, emotional appeals, references to shared identity. There's often a lot of code words and inside jokes and things like that. It makes heavy use of parallelism instead of subordination in grammar, and it relies on periodic sentences and climax rather than giving you the point right up front. Its philosophy assumes the speaker and audience are not equals. The speaker is shaping the audience's consciousness, and he does that by drawing on their existing beliefs and directs them towards action. What are some books that you can look at to see this style in action? I recommend you read Churchill's war speeches that are collected in a really good book called Never Give In. Others would be Lincoln's addresses, Martin Luther King's sermons and speeches. Patrick Henry wrote some great stuff. His speeches were recorded. Frederick Douglass's orations. And these are not meant to be parsed for information. Okay, Hitler was not giving information to the English. Churchill was not giving information to the English people. He was trying to motivate them to fight a war. Okay, so it's not being parsed for information. It's not even designed to be verified by independent observation. It's meant to move you. You want to use oratorical style when you need to rally men, when action matters more than analysis, when you're speaking to a crowd rather than an individual. You don't use it when you're trying to show someone something he hasn't seen, right? You'll just be preaching to the choir at that point, right? You see the difference? What about other kinds of writing? Has anybody ever read introspective writing? Anybody read essays? I read lots of essays. I read memoirs. I read lots of memoirs. These are often written in what I call contemplative style, sometimes in a romantic style, a capital R romantic, not like romance novels. And they're philosophically distinct. We'll talk about both. Contemplative style assumes that the writer has done the interior work. He's introspected on an issue. He's done the interior work that the reader has not done. And the focus isn't on the thing being observed. It's on the writer's interpretation of what's being observed. Remember, in classic style, the idea that you're interpreting what you're seeing is hidden from the reader. The pretense of classic style is there's no interpretation going on, right? In contemplative style, it's very obvious that interpretation is going on. In fact, the interpretation is the actual theme of the piece. So the focus isn't on the thing being observed, it's on the writer's interpretation. A great example of this is E.B. White. And he wrote a really interesting essay on watching a circus rider. And it's just so amazing because of his interpretation of the events. He contemplates it and offers his meditation on time, on youth, on delusion. You're not really expected to see what White sees. It's not really about the circus rider, right? It's about White's interpretation of what he's seeing. And that interpretation belongs to him. And we're allowed to witness that happen, that contemplation happen within his own heart and mind. Are there any books that you could go and read that could help you get some insight into the contemplative style? Sure. Every year I read Montaigne's essays, a selection of Montaigne's essays. He basically invented the essay form. You could read Thoreau's Walden. Again, you could read all of E.B. White's essays. They're all written in this style. Pascal's Pensées are also written in this style, and I highly recommend those. And if you want to go further back in time, you could go to Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, which are also contemplative in their philosophical outlook. If you want something more modern and almost postmodern, you could read Joan Didion's essays. She wrote some magnificent essays, one of them about having migraines, which is just an amazing essay. You should definitely check out Joan Didion. These writers possess experiences, and then they somehow can take this contemplative experience in their own heart and put it into the page. I'm a writer who really doesn't have the ability to do this, okay? It's one of the reasons that I admire it so much. You're not watching reality. A lot of people, when they read, I've noticed this reaction to Joan Didion. People go, I expected to read about reality. It's an essay. I want to hear. That's not what you're engaging with here, right? You're not engaging with reality. You're engaging with a mind that is itself engaging reality. Do you understand? You're engaging reality mediated through the mind of the writer. Now, that sounds like pretty far out stuff, right? But romantic writing goes even further. Its philosophy is that truth is actually completely subjective, and the writer can't be challenged on what he writes because what he expresses by definition is true to his expression. His sensations, memories, emotions are the only things he has access to. This is the quote, I dream of Jeannie with the light brown hair approach to a self-expression. Who can argue with them? The writing doesn't present truth. It expresses something in the writer himself. So now we're not looking at the world, we're looking at the writer. Remember, in contemplative style, we're experiencing the world through the mind of the writer. In the romantic style, we're simply experiencing the writer himself. What are some romantic style books if you want to get your head around this? You could read Rousseau's Confessions. In fact, I just reread that a few weeks ago. I would say that he probably created that style in the modern world. Very famous would be Proust's In Search of Lost Time. And there's a famous part of the book in which Proust's mother puts him to bed as a young boy, and it takes 60 pages, right? And the reason is the book isn't really about him getting put to bed. It's about, as a boy, his experience and love for his mother. And as he goes to sleep, the sorrow he feels that his mother's going away. He doesn't want to go to sleep because he feels like his mother is going away when he goes to sleep. This is what romantic writing is. Jack Kerouac's On the Road, famous book. Not one of my favorite books, but a good example of this kind of writing. You can look at a lot of romantic poetry. Byron, all of Byron. Shelley, Keats, Henry Miller. I like Henry Miller a lot. These writers present their inner experience as the subject itself. It's not a lens onto something else. It's not an interpretation. It's that they are the subject of the writing, okay? When would that ever be appropriate for you to write? Obviously for personal expression, poetry. Whenever the subject is your own personal experience and you're not asking readers to verify anything. It would be appropriate for anything where it would be inappropriate for anything where evidence matters or where you're claiming to show others something that they need to check, obviously. Contemplative style works very well for essays and reflection, but here's the thing, and this is why most people can't write good essays. I had to learn this the hard way. I write pretty good essays nowadays. Most of the scripts for these videos I write as essays, okay? And I get my head around it, and then I come and talk to you about an essay I've written. What the essay requires is that you have actually done the contemplation, okay? The essay asks you to look at the world through the contemplation of another mind, right? But what if the other mind has never done the contemplation? There's no essay to write. There's no contemplative style at all. You're just going back to classic style. And in classic style, you do reportage. You're not doing an essay, right? I think a lot of modern people, especially young people, don't do the work, the hard work of internal contemplation. They don't know how to do reflection, deep reflections in their own mind and in their own heart. I'll do future videos on this and try to help you on this. And I'll introduce the ancient notion of the nous or the heart, which is different than the mind, which I think is the key to having a reflective life. It's a life in which you can sit alone with your own thoughts and learn something. So it's hard to find good essayists because of that. If you haven't done the work, it's really just fraudulent when you adopt the posture of the contemplative style in the essay without having done anything to make the essay come to life. And it fails when your readers need action-ready information rather than your mediation process. Look, if you're reporting on an event that happened, contemplative style is probably not appropriate if the reportage is what's important, okay? If the interpretation of the events from your position is important and interesting, then you would use contemplative style and write an essay. Do you see the difference? There's some other kinds of writing. We don't often talk about them. I think they're very interesting, and I read them often. I guess you could call it prophetic style. Its philosophy is that the truth comes from transcendent powers and not from ordinary people. It claims that readers can't verify what the writer knows. Imagine that. You're writing something that cannot be verified, in principle, cannot be verified, because the knowledge came from revelation, not observation. When Samuel sees David in the Bible and says, "This is the one," he's not drawing a conclusion from evidence that anyone could examine. He's not using the classic style saying, "Look, if everybody will just look, you'll see David is the one." He's not using contemplative style and saying, "Listen, let me tell you about my interpretation of why David is the one." He's not doing that. He's saying the Lord told him that David is the one. And so prophetic style depends entirely on the audience accepting that the speaker has special access to the truth that the audience lacks and cannot obtain. Now, wait a minute. I'm talking about the Bible. But what are some other situations where the speaker has special access to the truth that the audience cannot obtain? I've been in some fascinating situations like that. I once went to a presentation by a famous physicist on quantum physics and higher order geometry. And the people in the audience were mainly lay people. And so he was bringing this as a popular presentation of quantum physics and higher order geometry to people who could not verify what he was saying and had no access to the truth. They did not understand the maths at all. So in that way, this physicist had to change his style of presentation. He couldn't present the way he does to other physicists who would verify his work. Okay? That would be practical style. He didn't do it in a popular way for an informed audience. That would be classic style. He didn't do it as sometimes math and science books are written from the interpretation of the observer doing the experiments. So it's not written in contemplative style. What did this physicist have to do? Because his audience simply did not have access to the truths he was talking about and could not verify. He had to adopt a prophetic style. He spoke in a way that he had access to transcendent knowledge, and he was bringing it to these people. That's about the only time you should ever use the prophetic style. It's when you have prophetic authority, when your audience frankly accepts that authority. Otherwise, you're just a man claiming special knowledge that he can't demonstrate. But I just wanted to let you know that prophetic style comes about in ways that are surprising sometimes. It's a result of the audience being unable to obtain and verify the information that's coming to them from the speaker. Is style really a philosophical choice? What I've been describing to you are stances on communication, and I've almost presented them through genres of writing. But I think they are, and I think here's what matters most. Most men are stylistically incoherent because they never examined what each style commits them to. For example, has anyone ever told you that the essay requires you to do the contemplative work and that it's the world mediated by your own mind? And that's what's interesting about an essay, that it is not reportage. Has anybody ever told you that? And consequently, probably because nobody ever told you that, you didn't do the work of contemplation and your essay sucked. There's just all kinds of things like it that are important in thinking through how to communicate with other people effectively and what the assumptions are. But each time it does entail these deep philosophical commitments. For example, in an essay, you're presuming that someone can understand your internal states. You're presuming that interpretations can be shared, that there's a kind of translation process that can go on. I think style actually does entail deep philosophical commitments. And I think that's why people have trouble writing and speaking in different styles. Because they deep down feel they're changing something important about what they believe. And they actually are. I think you should think of style instrumentally. I think you should think of style as a tool. And so I think you should think about picking the right style for the right audience and the right occasion. And to do that, you need to ask some fundamental questions. First, what's your relationship to the truth that you're presenting? Did you observe something that anyone could observe? Are you reminding people of common wisdom? Are you passing along information for a practical purpose? Are you interpreting? Are you expressing your own subjective experience? The second question you should ask, second kind of question you should ask, is what's your relationship with your audience? Is it equals who could verify your claims? Subordinates who need directions? Or is your audience a boss who needs to make a decision? Is it a crowd that needs to be unified and wants to be unified? Is it fellow contemplatives who want to see your thinking process, see if they can apply it to what they do? Those kinds of questions. The third kinds of questions that you might ask are, what's the purpose of this? Am I presenting the truth? Am I just transmitting information, making no claims about the truth? Remember, the truth is always theory laden, right? So presenting data is not presenting the truth, right? Are you trying to move people to action? Are you processing experience somehow? That's the third category of questions. And how you answer that, and it's not so much answers, but how you approach those questions are going to determine what style is appropriate and what will be most consistent with your answer. And this is really important because imagine trying to write a contemplative document for your boss who's trying to make a decision about acquiring a company. He doesn't care about your subjective inner experience of this mergers and acquisition. He's not looking for that. You see what I mean? You'll seem out of step, you'll seem inappropriate, and it won't be an effective communication. I claim that this applies not only to writing, but also to appearance. And I started with writing because a lot of people, I think, can relate to it better. But let's talk about it when it comes to your own personal style and appearance. Classic style is dress where you present yourself as a transparent window to your own competence, right? Nobody should even notice how you're dressed. You just come across as competent. Nobody thinks about it. They think about what you're doing and saying. So your clothing is unobtrusive and it's not designed, clothing style is not designed to make a statement of any kind. Remember, it's just a window onto the truth, right? You meet the standards of the context, but you don't call any attention to your conformity or your deviation, right? Who exemplifies this? I say guys like Cary Grant, Gregory Peck. The clothing that they wore never distracted from them. Grant in North by Northwest just wears a suit throughout the entire film. He's running through fields, climbing Mount Rushmore. You just never think about it. It's so unostentatious and it's so normal that it's just Cary Grant. You don't even think about what he's wearing, okay? The clothes serve the man, not the reverse. You could also say Fred Astaire or maybe Gary Cooper in some of his later films. These guys dress so appropriately to their context that thinking back on those films, I can't remember how they were dressed. I just think of them, the man, right? That's classic style. It's just a transparent presentation of the man himself. What about plain style? Plain style in dress would be common, unpretentious, functional, right? This could be work clothes, guys who wear practical fabrics, no adornment. The philosophy here is we're just all equals here. Sophistication is suspicious. A tie, that's suspicious. Substance matters, not surfaces. You see this in the guys that always wear their caps backwards, the guys that always wear golf shirts, never will wear a dress shirt. If you look at Henry Fonda in The Grapes of Wrath, I think would be a classic example of this style. Any of Jimmy Stewart's everyman roles, Paul Newman's off-screen style, he wore jeans, t-shirts, and work boots pretty much everywhere he went. The Marlboro Man. These men are dressed to signal, I'm one of you. I have no pretensions. There's no sophistication. It's common cloth for common men, right? It's not designed to just disappear into the background. It's designed to actually tell you, I'm one of you. What about practical style in dress? Practical style, remember, practical writing, it was seeing writing as a tool to serve a function. In practical style with dress, you look upon your dress as a tool to serve a function as well. This is like you've heard of the Silicon Valley uniform, right? So if you're a developer, you wear a t-shirt with whatever APIs you're using, the logo of that company on them. If you're a venture capitalist, it's a zippered sweater, right? There is a uniform in Silicon Valley. There is a dress code. If you're working at Morgan Stanley, I did a project there and they told me not to wear cowboy boots, right? Because I had to wear lace-up dress shoes with my suits. Because that signaled that I fit into their hierarchy and my place in it, right? I'm dressed for the job. I don't dress for myself. I dress for the job. Remember, practical writing is one job title talking to another. Practical dress is one job title dressing for another. Military dress uniforms are like this. You could think of Indiana Jones or Tom Hanks in a lot of his roles. The closing says, I understand what this situation requires. I met those requirements. You can trust me. I fit in. What about an oratorical style in dress? Remember, oratorical style is designed to have an impact on a crowd. It's not designed to blend in. It's not designed to signal even that you're a member of the group. It's designed to signal somehow that you're above the group. A general's uniform with its medals. Think of a preacher's robes. This clothing shapes how others see authority and identity. Look at Marlon Brando in The Godfather. Look at how he's dressed to show that he's above others. The tuxedo in the opening scene clearly establishes that Don Corleone is a man of consequence, even before he speaks. You can look at any of Laurence Olivier's Shakespearean roles, which you can get on video on any of the streaming platforms. I think Denzel Washington, when he's played Men of Authority, is a great example of this too, right? He commands the room, almost by the way he's dressed. The man that dresses like this, it does not dress for himself. He doesn't dress for transparency or belonging. He's dressing to impose his will on the audience and how the audience will perceive his power, okay? What about romantic style? That's the last one we haven't talked about. Now, this one is maybe a little controversial, right? Because remember, romantic writing was about the self-expression of the writer. The inner experience of the writer is the subject of the writing. This in clothing is basically the artist's costume. It's the eccentric professor, the way he dresses. The philosophy is, this reveals who I am. I'm not dressing for your verification. I'm not dressing to impose anything on you, but I am dressing to reflect who I am. Guys that do this are guys like Johnny Depp. James Dean did this. In his rebel roles, Marlon Brando did this. For example, the leather jacket in The Wild One, which is a great movie if you haven't seen it. Robert Downey Jr.'s off-screen style is clearly like this. These men dress to express their own individuality. The clothing is not transparent. It doesn't indicate competence. It's not even practical in most cases. It's self-presentation as art. It invites you to see who they are, at least who they think they are, and not what they do. The problem with all of these styles is that you can get incoherent mismatches, right? Sometimes guys will wear clothing that combines incompatible philosophies, practical in some elements and romantic in others, with the overall effect announcing they haven't figured anything out yet. It just looks weird, right? So what happens, that's mismatching your outfit, right? But a worse situation is when you mismatch your style to the occasion, right? This is really crucial. Style mismatch to the occasion is going to create massive skepticism and even derision. People could just insult you or make fun of you. There's two kinds of mismatch, right? There's a group mismatch and a content mismatch. Both of them can destroy your credibility. Group mismatch is when you use a style that violates what the group expects. Every social context has implicit style expectations. And if you violate them, people will stop listening to your content. They just start questioning your judgment. Okay. If you use an oratorical, ostentatious style when people are expecting normal conversation, you just become a blowhard. The guy who gives a speech when someone asks a simple question, remember, you know this guy. The man who turns every dinner party into a platform for his pronouncements. People don't think, what a commanding presence. They think, why is he performing? What is this? Why is he taking over? Use romantic self-expression in a business context, and you're just going to become a damn joke, right? The man in the meeting who shares his feelings when people want data, give me a break. The employee who dresses like an artist when the context requires a professional presentation, he's not seen as authentic. Maybe in his own mind, he thinks he's authentic, but he's not going to be seen by the group as authentic. He's seen as someone who just understand where he is. And the fact, doesn't understand what the group needs to do. He's going to signal that he's an outsider and can't be trusted, okay? So you need to use contemplative style when people need practical direction. And when you become, this is not going to work. Imagine people want to know how to do something and you're coming in them, telling them what your experience of learning this is about. Nobody gives a shit, okay? The boss who offers meditations on the human condition when his team needs a decision. The leader who possesses his thoughts out loud when men just want to know what to do. Like, I've been in that situation a lot. I've had leaders just sit there and process and never tell me what I need to do. And then they were going to always tell me what to do, the same thing. But I have to get that 2 hours later after just listening to some bullshit. So let me give you some examples in dress. The guy shows up to a board meeting dressed like James Dean. They're not going to admire his authenticity. They're going to question his judgment, right? If you wear Cary Grant's tailoring to a construction site, you're not being classy. You're just being stupid, right? You dress in plain workman's style at a formal dinner. You haven't made a statement about equality. You've just announced you don't respect the people who spent all this money to do this nice occasion for you, right? The people are just going to think you're an asshole. The man who wears a three-piece suit to his kid's soccer game, he's not projecting competence. He's projecting that he doesn't know where he is. The man in cargo shorts at a funeral, he's not being himself. He's being contemptuous of the dead and the grieving. Group mismatch always reads as failure, never as bold individuality. And people assume you either don't understand the context or don't respect it. Okay, neither interpretation is going to serve your purposes. What about a content mismatch? This is when a style that doesn't fit, you use a style that doesn't fit what you're actually saying. Okay, this creates a different kind of skepticism. People sense the form contradicts the substance, and that means you stop being believable to them. Suppose you use plain style for sophisticated ideas. You're sitting there in workman's clothes and you're talking about deep philosophy. People are just going to think that you're shallow, and you're going to have to overcome that. Maybe you can overcome it, but you're going to have to overcome it. Try to communicate quantum mechanics when you're dressed ostentatiously, a movie star using confessional style. Try to explain a business strategy with plain old folk wisdom. Now, I've seen this tried. You say, Jeff, nobody would ever do that. I cannot tell you how many football analogies I have heard in business meetings. Okay, everybody just thinks the man is stupid and can't do rigorous work. People are not going to think you're accessible when you do things like that. They're going to think you just don't actually understand the complexity of what you're discussing. Use contemplative style for simple facts, and you're just going to seem pretentious. Think about this. Some guy says this, let me share my meditations on today's weather forecast. Yeah, fuck you. I just want the weather forecast. People sense immediately that the heavy apparatus is unwarranted, and you're just trying to make yourself more interesting or important than you really appear. It's certainly more pretentious than the subject warrants. What if you try to use oratorical style for matters that require evidence? You give exhortations and your calls to action at a math conference. People are just going to think you're nuts. They're just going to think you're a con man, okay? The salesman that uses Churchill's rhythms to sell you a used car, you're just going to be this guy's a con man. What about a politician who rallies and inspires when you've asked him for data? You say, hey, I want to know how many crossover voters we had in the last primary. And he starts giving you a rally speech. He's going to be, this guy's a con man. That mismatch in style signals something that makes people very suspicious, okay? So be careful about that kind of content mismatch. How does content mismatch work in the way you dress? Dress as if you're commanding troops when you're asking your team for input, and people will sense the contradiction. You came dressed to command, but now you're asking us to tell you what to do. That doesn't make any damn sense. Your costume says authority, but your words say collaboration. And they're not going to collaborate with you because they're like, whoa, what's going on here? If you come in with that romantic, self-expressive dress, think the movie stars on the red carpet, right? When you're presenting quarterly sales numbers, and people go, what the hell is this guy hiding here? This is not right. And they can't put it into words. They can't link it up really, but the spectacle they're seeing doesn't match up with a credible performance. Suppose you dress in workman's plain style when you're selling luxury goods. What if you were standing there, work boots, torn jeans, t-shirt, and a black leather jacket, and you're selling high-end luxury handbags? Nobody's going to believe your bullshit, right? The point is that the style indicates your philosophical commitments to the things that you're doing. Whether you like it or not, that's what people see. And if you're honest with yourself, that's what. So in both kinds of mismatch, you're going to get a credibility problem. It's just in different ways. Group mismatch makes people question your judgment, social intelligence. You seem like someone who doesn't understand where he is, or maybe worse, doesn't care. Content mismatch makes people question your honesty and substance. You seem like someone whose packaging doesn't match the product, and that suggests deception. There are men I know that no matter how much I've talked to them about this, they consistently get this stuff wrong. I've seen it in men who do it in writing, men who do it in speaking, men who do it in dress. Fortunately, I've never met someone who does it in all three. That would be really terrible. But they create, and these are very competent people, but they have a permanent credibility deficit because they just refuse to accept the realities that their style indicates philosophical commitments, and people intuitively know this. People learn to discount everything they say because the style is always signaling something different than the content. Okay? It doesn't make sense. Style can apply to things besides just writing and clothes. Your mannerisms, how you hold yourself, your conduct, at an occasion, same principles. Your conduct at a dinner party, in a meeting, or at a formal event, all of it answers the fundamental questions, and mismatch works the same way. Classic conduct treats others as equals, capable of recognizing what you present, right? The classic style, just it's a conversation of equals. We're showing truth that's equally accessible by everybody. You just have to look, right? That means that you're sharing attention on common objects, the food, the occasion, whatever. You don't dominate, you converse. So, at a dinner party, that's how you would want to conduct yourself. Plain conduct is unaffected, common, and direct. It's the handshake of equals, the straightforward manner, no ceremony, no precision. Practical conduct serves the purpose of the occasion. You know why you're there. You accomplish the goal. You don't make a mistake a networking event for a conversation among friends, right? Or a business meeting for a salon, right? Oratorical conduct is for leadership moments. You're shaping a room. You're making a toast, rallying the team. It's not conversation. It's performance designed to move a group in unity. Okay? The man who dominates every conversation, what would his style be like? Is there just one thing you can do? No. Actually, that would be a man who's failed at all of these things, right? He's adopted a posture that's not classic. It's not oratorical. It's not contemplative. It's not romantic, okay? He's demonstrating stylistic coherence everywhere he goes because he only presents himself one way. People eventually look upon him the way we would look philosophically at a nihilist. He's nothing but just a collection of appetites. He has no principles, no stand. And everyone will sense that intuitively from him. And for him to get anything done, he's got to overcome that, right? It creates friction for him. And everybody will perceive this person as tiresome and they won't find him compelling, okay? How can you start by building a kind of coherent style? Start by just understanding the fundamental stance, okay? Each style commits you to positions on truth, presentation, the scene, the cast, the relationship between thought and language. Know what you're committing to before you commit. Then match that style to the situation, right? If you're presenting truth to people who are going to want to verify what you're saying, that's classic style. You should speak and dress that way. Plain style is for when you're addressing common people about common things. Practical styles, when the job needs to get done, all you care about is the facts. Oratorical styles, when you need to move a crowd to action. Contemplative style is when you're offering your interpretation. Romantic style is when you're expressing stuff that just can't be verified. Okay? Prophetic style is when you are the expert and nobody can really understand what you're saying or can understand why you're recommending the course of action that you're using. Match your style to the content, right? Don't use heavy apparatus for light subjects. Don't use light apparatus for heavy ones. Make the form fit the substance. That's the basic message of this video. Fourth, be consistent with your chosen style, okay? Classic style just doesn't hedge anything. Plain style doesn't sophisticate anything. Practical style doesn't pursue elegance at the expense of efficiency. Oratorical style doesn't present evidence for private verification. It just moves. Contemplate or express. Don't confuse the two. Now, some of you out there are going to be saying, but how do I express my authentic self? Look, authenticity is completely misunderstood. I'm going to do a separate video on it. After I wrote this essay, I realized that a lot of young men are very confused about what authenticity actually is. Authenticity means aligning your style with the actual philosophical commitments, not expressing whatever you feel in the moment, regardless of the context. Okay. The man who shows up to a formal dinner in casual clothes because, quote, this is who I am, Dad. He's not achieved authenticity. He's just become an asshole. He's refused to think. He's failed to recognize that the situation makes claims on him as much as he makes claims on himself, and that other people deserve consideration, and that those contexts are real things with real structures. Real authenticity means knowing who you are, what situation you're in, and choosing a style that genuinely reflects both of those things, not just you. Now, that's harder than just doing whatever you want, and it requires the work of understanding yourself and your circumstances and understanding your community and their expectations. So what's the bottom line here? Your style is broadcasting a philosophy, whether you've examined it or not. All the fundamental questions about truth, presentation, relationship, purpose are going to be assumed by people when they see how you speak, how you dress, how you conduct yourself. Now, most men do not present a coherent picture because they've never examined these questions. They've never thought about what their way of speaking, not what they speak, but their manner of speaking communicates about them and about their relationship to the things they're saying. They mix incompatible philosophies. They adopt postures without understanding what those postures actually commit them to in the eyes of their audience and how it will provoke skepticism. So they mismatch style to the group and the content and then wonder why nobody takes them seriously. The man who wants to be taken seriously develops style by developing a coherent philosophy. He asks, what can I know? How should I present it? Who am I addressing and why? What does this situation require? What does this content demand? Notice that only part of that is about him. Most of it's about other people and the occasion. If you answer those questions consistently and you have a consistent appearance, a consistent manner of conduct, a consistent way of speaking, and you let the answers to those questions shape that your writing, speaking, dress, and conduct, you can avoid the mismatches that confuse people about you and create skepticism towards you. Okay? So a style philosophy can remove all kinds of barriers that you never have to overcome, right? Because you've basically not made the mistakes that create the barriers. Now, avoiding a mistake is much better than fixing a mistake. And overcoming some of the skepticism can be very challenging. I've seen people fail at it many times. People who are totally competent. Okay? So what I'd encourage you to do is think about yourself, the occasion, and your audience. Think about some of the styles we've talked about and just reflect on how you could do better there. Do the work. This is important. This prevents friction that frankly doesn't need to be there for you. You'll just have obstacles that will never appear before you because you've taken care of this, right? Get clear about this and let that clarity shape what you're doing, all right? Get off YouTube, do the reflection, and do the work. So long.
The Jeff Younger Show, signing off.